How's it going, everybody? My name is Jason. I'll be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, I play matchmaker to assign some of the league's key free agents to every CFL team. But quickly, before we get started, if you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is just by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. I sincerely appreciate the support, and without further ado, let's get into it. For this video, we're not going in any particular order, so starting with Montreal, we have Shane Bergman, who is an offensive guard for the Calgary Stampeders. Montreal starting guard Trey Rutherford just surprisingly announced his retirement after just 3 CFL seasons. He was developing into a nice offensive lineman along their front, and adding Bergman really just solves that problem that just arose from Rutherford's retirement. Bergman is one of the best run blockers in the CFL. He could really help this power running game with William Stanback and help turn this Montreal offense into a dominant offense in both the running game and the passing game. Moving on to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and my selection here is DominiquePosey of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Posey, who's actually a former Grey Cup MVP with the Toronto Argonauts, famously in that snow game a couple of years ago, is a great fit, I think, for Winnipeg because Winnipeg doesn't necessarily need that number one target kind of guy because they already have Darwin Adams. They have a collection of guys that fill a bunch of different roles. But I think Posey would add another veteran target to this, be that role that Kenny Lawler played in 2019. Lawler was actually their leading receiver that season. I think Posey, who's kind of been the odd man out in this Hamilton receiving core with Braylon Addison coming back from the NFL, I think Posey's definitely going elsewhere, and I think Winnipeg would be a very good fit for both the player and the team. Next, for the Toronto Argonauts, we have Cordero Law of the Calgary Stampeders. And I really like Law's fit with the Argonauts because they really lack any kind of difference-making players on the defensive side. Yes, they have Alden Darby, who came away with, I think, 5 interceptions in 2019, though I think he had his fair share of problems in coverage, getting beat deep. But I think they could really thrive if they could bring in an elite edge presence like Cordero Law. And Law, he's not the most dominant player against the run, but he is going to help this Toronto pass defense by just getting after the quarterback, giving them some kind of threat that the offensive line has to account for on a weekly basis, and really would improve the play of everybody else around them in that front seven and in the secondary. For the Calgary Stampeders, my pick is Frankie Williams of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And this signing is kind of twofold for me. I look at that from two perspectives because Williams can actually play 2 different positions. He can play a variety of positions in the secondary, but Williams can also contribute as an all-star punt returner, which he was in 2019. And what Williams really brings to the table is something that the Stamps really do need. There's not a proven guy really on this roster now that Terry Williams is now in Edmonton that can handle punt and kick return duties. And so, combined with the fact that Calgary also could use a lot of help in the secondary with all their NFL losses still carrying over from 2019, I really do like Williams' fit as a guy that can fill both those kind of needs for Calgary. Next up, we have the Ottawa Redblacks, and for this, I've selected wide receiver Eric Rogers of the Calgary Stampeders. And for this, comes as no surprise to Redblacks fans, because this team really struggled on offense in 2019. And going into 2021, there's a lot of questions still about this offense, given that Nick Arbuckle, the quarterback, has not agreed to a restructured contract. We don't know how that's going to affect the situation going forward. But you know how you can help the situation is by bringing in a bona fide number 1 receiver to help this receiving core form into place with Rogers, Sinopoli, and now Jalen Saunders coming back to the CFL after taking a couple of years off. And those 3 guys, combined with some other guys like Anthony Coombs and a few other national players that will see a lot of playing time, you have the makings of a pretty good CFL offense right there on the perimeter. Rogers would just bring this all-around skill set that this team is lacking on a weekly basis when they lost Greg Ellingson in free agency a few years ago. And I just think it would be a really great fit for Ottawa. For the BC Lions, my selection here is Matt O'Donnell of the Edmonton football team. This is an interesting one because I'm not too sure if BC would be willing to spend big money on another Canadian offensive lineman after signing Suk Chung in free agency in 2019 and seeing Suk Chung kind of disappoint in his first season with BC. But that being said, I think Chung is going to bounce back, and adding O'Donnell to really solidify both guard positions now that they also have their tackles set is going to be so important for quarterback Mike Riley to have success in BC. If they can get the ball out to these playmakers, if they can solidify this pass protection that was just a disaster in 2019 with O'Donnell, Chung, you got the tackles, Figueroa, and Riker Matthews, who comes over for Hamilton. If you get those four guys set, I like their ability to compete in 2021 as a playoff team, or even a Grey Cup contender if everything clicks into place with Mike Riley. Moving on to the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and this is going to be an interesting one, but I'm going with kicker Justin Medlock of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Medlock has actually played in Hamilton a while ago, and now his career's taken him to the NFL, to Winnipeg, and he's had a ton of success as both a field goal kicker and a punter, which is a totally valuable asset to have in the Canadian game in terms of you don't have to waste a roster spot on another player, another punter. You can use that as another position. And I just like Medlock's fit with Hamilton because they lose their kicker, Liam Hauerlahu, to the NFL, and he's been kicking it around down there for the last little bit, trying to find his way onto a roster. And Medlock would solve both the Tiger Cats' kicking and punting duties, and I think this is just a perfect fit. And don't underestimate the value of having a good kicker because the Tiger Cats are actually one of the only teams in the CFL that on paper going into 2021 that doesn't have their kicking situation settled, and that would be a concern, looming concern for me, not having a reliable player in the kicking game, and Medlock would absolutely provide that. I would venture he's probably the best all-around kicker in the league today. For the Edmonton football team, my selection here is Solomon Alamimian of the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. And there's no question that Edmonton is loaded on the offensive side after the signing of Darrell Walker and also bringing in former most outstanding lineman Derek Dennis in free agency. But what this team really needs is some leadership on the defensive side with a potentially very young defense, especially in the back eight of the defense, in the secondary especially, but also in the linebacking core where Justin Tuggle is also a scheduled free agent. And Alamimian is, he's getting up there in age, but he is always been a constant leader in the CFL. This guy is the only player in league history to be a defensive player and win the league's most outstanding player award. And even though he's a bit older and he's not as impactful as he once was, he can still play at a high level, and he did so in 2019 with Saskatchewan. And last up now, we have the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, and I have chosen for them linebacker Henoc Muamba of the Montreal Alouettes. And this is an interesting one for me because if you look at the Rough Riders free agency situation, is they're scheduled to lose a couple of big names with Solomon Alamimian, Charleston Hughes potentially, and also Canadian linebacker Cameron Judge, which would be a huge loss for them. Don't get me wrong, that would be a huge loss because of the whole ratio flexibility that Judge gives them. And so bringing in another Canadian linebacker in Muamba would help alleviate that problem immediately. And Muamba would be the kind of guy that could also bring what Alamimian brings to the table with leadership capabilities, being that tackling machine in the middle of the defense. I just love Muamba's fit there. He's played in Saskatchewan before, and I really like his potential to go back there as a fit for Saskatchewan. So that's going to do it for today's video. I'd like to thank you guys all for watching. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is just by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. Be sure to let me know in the comment section below what matches you think could actually come to reality in 2021 free agency. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.